Welcome back to Formative. On the show today, we're joined by John Loeffler. John has spent nearly 5 decades in the music industry. You might recognize his work from the iconic Pokémon television series, which his company helped bring to life musically. He's also collaborated with legendary artists like Cheap Trick, John Fogerty, and Earth, Wind & Fire. Today we talk to him about his determination to live beyond the ordinary, the early days in New York where chance connections shaped his career, and the many paths a person can take within the music industry. Hello and welcome. I'm Rachel Gazdick, CEO of New York Edge, and my co-host today is Jacob from the Community School for Social Justice. Hey, Jacob, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Hi, my name is Jacob. I'm a podcaster, community member of my school, a mentor, a scholar, a big brother, and a king in the making.
And today's guest is John Loeffler, an expert in the music industry.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have about the music business and my illustrious 40 years of sweat and anguish.
We're very excited. So let's get to it. Jacob, what's your first question?
All right. So my first question for John is, where did you grow up and who inspired you to do music?
I grew up in a little farm town called Carlisle, Pennsylvania, and the only thing that's distinguished about the town is that it's very rural and very quiet, but it was relatively close to a city called Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where the Amish live, and then a little farther was Philadelphia. But even in that little town, people loved music. And I was at the age, I was just very impressionable, and I'd turn on Saturday morning television. There's a show called The Dick Clark Show, and every Saturday there'd be some famous pop singer that was on the radio at that time. My parents said I would just sit there mesmerized. I just wouldn't move. I was just staring at it. And for whatever reason, in this little town, music was a really important part of the culture, especially R&B and soul music. And I just fell madly in love with the Temptations and Aretha Franklin and Otis Redding and Wilson Pickett. And that was all the music that I just fell madly in love with. And I just asked for guitar. I asked my parents to help me get guitar lessons. And looking back, that little 4-year-old, 5-year-old kid that was looking at television with wide eyes, and I never lost that. When I got out of college, I said, I'm going to go back to being that 5-year-old kid. I'm going to go back to do the things that I wanted to do when I was 5 years old. And it wasn't really my family, except that they nurtured me. They built me a little room in the basement so I could go bang on drums and make music with some friends. They never said, don't do it, but they always were hoping that I was going to become a lawyer or a doctor, and I just couldn't do that, so.
Well, what prompted you to come to New York? And 2, what was it like being pressured by other people who's like, oh, do these other things? Like, maybe you shouldn't have done this. Like, maybe you should have pursued this path instead of this. Did you go to New York as a way to rebel against all these people? Or was it just because it was a home of music or whatever? Like a major centerpiece for music?
Honestly, it's probably both, to be really honest. For me, being from the East Coast, New York was the place where music was being made. I mean, I could have gone to California, but I lived closer to New York, so it made sense. But I would say probably there's a part of me that just wanted to do something different. I just couldn't see myself living what I would call a normal life. I just couldn't do it. I just felt this need to do something that was unique and maybe exciting and creative, but I just couldn't do a traditional job. I didn't have a drop in my blood that could do it, honestly. I couldn't do it. And I knew it. I one day woke up in college and I said, I cannot do the normal route. I embraced it. I said, well, if I can't do it, then let's do what you can do. And, with limited skills in the beginning, I came to New York. I knew 2 people living here. I had never been here for more than an hour at the train station. So I didn't even know anything about New York. I didn't know how the subways worked. I knew nothing, really. And I came here and I kind of rented a room in somebody else's apartment. And I just slowly started teaching myself the ways of New York and who to meet. And yeah, it just Nothing very magical. It's just a lot of hard work. But I'll tell you the other thing is I love people. Even talking to you, Jacob, and giving you advice. And you know what? I think people picked up on that. When I came to New York, even when I was a waiter, people would say to me, "You seem like a good guy. What are you doing? Why are you in New York?" I'd say, "Well, I'm here to be a songwriter." They said, "Well, you should meet my friend so-and-so." And New York City is such an open place, especially if you give out that kind of energy and enthusiasm and earnestness. And people could not have been nicer to me. And people would say, "Well, my uncle owns this store. He sells records and he knows a guy at Columbia Records. Maybe you should talk to him." I said, "Okay." And that's kind of how I just started. I literally started knowing no one. And I'd go to a restaurant where I work with a bunch of dimes, because back then payphones, you needed 10 cents. And I would sit there with this pile of dimes and just calling these numbers that people would give me in between tables and just say, "Hey, I'm John Loeffler. I'm in New York. I really got to figure out how to make a career as a songwriter and as a musician. Your friend said I should call you." I just started doing that.
So you're in New York and you're working in restaurants as a waiter. Is there a moment where your music career really started to pick up?
I was like every 2 weeks, I would take all my tips and go to some small little studio and record my songs. And in the process, I met some people that were doing music, actually producing TV commercials. And I was asked, mainly because they felt sorry for me. They said, "Maybe we can give you a little bit of money. You can help us write a couple of little songs for commercials." And that led to, over a long period of time, but it led to a career writing music for TV commercials and jingles. And I'm a singer as well. So I would sing as well as write the songs. And I wrote music for everything from and sang on everything from Coca-Cola to I Love Eggs to Jif Peanut Butter to Kool-Aid to Revlon. 3, 4, 5 times a week I was writing and in the studio writing commercials. That led to me eventually to have my own recording studio, hiring other composers to work with me, and started doing TV shows and TV series and movie soundtracks. That led to doing cartoon shows, and I kind of fell into doing music for cartoons, including Pokémon. And I was the co-writer of all the music for Pokémon, all the songs, and underscore for almost 18 years with a 1 or 2 years break. That led to me becoming an executive for a record label, BMG, which is the last job I had until about 18 months ago, where I'm now freelancing, doing a lot of different projects, one of which is with a great record producer, owner of this studio named Jerry Wunda, and he and I have launched a company called Wonder World, and it's all about discovering and developing new musical talent.
Would you say creating music for Pokemon was a game changer in your career? Was that what really skyrocketed you into just being successful?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was successful for about 15 years before that. And that was just a fantastic opportunity. None of us knew when we were asked to write the music, because don't forget, when I was first asked to work on Pokemon, no one knew what it was. It was a TV series in Japan that supposedly was very popular, and a company in the United States got the rights to reproduce much of it in English and for the rest of the Western world. And the creative director and the producer of that company came to me and said, "One of the things we want to do is change the music, because the music probably wouldn't appeal that much to young kids." So he said, "Would you like to take a shot at reimagining what the music could sound like?" And I already had a studio. I already had a bunch of composers working with me. So we all just jumped in, and it just seemed like a fun experience, a fun opportunity. And we just said, well, let's just do it. And if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, we'll go on to the next project. So in hindsight, looking later, I made the most money, to be honest, from Pokemon. And it was an amazing life changer a couple years later, when it really kind of was established and then it became a big phenomenon. But when I first got it, it just seemed like it's just another gig and another job, and I was just happy to get another job. And wherever it led, I was happy with.
Can you tell me about some of the mistakes you've made during your career?
Well, I think my arrogance in the beginning, and maybe was covering up fearfulness, not recognizing how much I didn't know. And in hindsight, had I in my early 20s recognized how much I didn't know and gone back to maybe taking music classes, which I wasn't doing in college because I was so hell-bent and not doing the traditional music thing. But even in pop or rock and roll music or the music scene I was breaking into, there's still so many rules and so many kind of skills you need. And I think that was really a mistake on my part, because in my probably fearfulness that I would find out what I didn't know, or maybe I wasn't as talented as I thought, that I didn't follow up on that. And I wish I had been just a little bit more careful and thoughtful, and I wish I had kind of kept training myself. You know, in the end, I did okay because I was just educated by so many beautiful, talented people around me. And I learned through the experience, but I wish I had been a little bit more open to continue to learn rather than just try to make it happen on my own.
Yeah, nah, I get that. I'm really hard-headed. I always try to just like do everything by myself, or ask for help whatsoever. And it's usually because of that I always end up not achieving the results I want. I end up creating something that's below what I actually want. Like, I ended up...
Well, it's okay. Look, how great is that? I'm sorry to interrupt, but how great is that you're recognizing that's a tendency that you may have. And I will tell you, as we're talking now, once I started being open to, in music we call collaborating, but that I was open to kind of recognizing there were a lot of things I didn't know, and I was open to working with people that were more talented or more capable than I was, that's when I really started to thrive. Because I got so much better because of those people around me, because I was learning from them finally. I wasn't doing it all on my own anymore. I was not just sitting in one little room on this piano banging out songs. I was actually surrounded by people more experienced, many more talented. And once I said, look, I got to learn. I got to be open. I got to meet new people. That's when I started doing better myself. And that was, for me, I mean, that's for a young student who's thinking about it, that's an amazing lesson. And Jacob, you're already thinking about it, which is awesome. I mean, recognizing that stubbornness and bullheadedness, which no question I had as well. And if you realize now at your age that you have a tendency to do that, then that's, how good is that? You're going to like prosper more, and you're going to learn, and you'll make adjustments, and you'll be more open to learning. It's good.
I'm someone who's also very much interested in like music, and just like I want to become a singer at some point in my life. And by some point, I literally mean like right after high school. However, I've just been really struggling to actually like get that ball rolling, because like I have no confidence in my voice. There's that. So I did a ton of research on like your history and stuff like that. And one of the things you did was did you graduate from Williams College?
I did.
So when you went to that college, it said that you didn't attend any like
music classes.
Yeah, you wasn't part of any music majors, none of that. And you just literally just went there with no music, none. So
crazy. What can I tell you? I'm insane.
Yeah.
And my parents said I'm insane. And the world said I was insane, but I was too stubborn to give up. So first of all, it's not like I wasn't doing music. I was in bands. So I was performing. It just wasn't part of the academic. I wasn't taking classes in music, because all the classes that they were teaching, and maybe I should have, but they seemed so boring and old fashioned. They were talking about classical composition and, vocalizing for choral groups, none of which I was that interested in. I loved rock and roll. I love songwriting. And so I figured I'll just get a good education. I'll focus on all the things like English and philosophy and political science. And then I would just keep my interest in music and art to myself.
So it was more of like a hobby at that point.
It was a passion and a hobby, but it was a real passion. The more I did it, the more I said, I got to do this when I get out of college.
Yeah, I honestly completely get that. Because for me, just listening to music and hearing the messages these artists have to convey, like, it really moves me. And like, literally, music has fundamentally changed who I am as a person. Like, Kendrick Lamar's lyrics, they've really changed me. And just like all these other performances, all these singers and rappers, live performances I've seen on YouTube, they've really like shaped who I am.
Look, the music business is a pretty big business, and there's many aspects of it other than being the writer or the singer or even the producer. But you could, look, you could be working for a video company that shoots videos of artists. You could work at a streaming service like Spotify as a intern in the beginning. And you could, or like Apple Music. And you can start learning about how, when music is being presented to those streaming services, what they need to listen to and what they're looking for before they select stuff. You could be working as an assistant in a law firm in the beginning, and you could be the lawyer for musicians. You could work for an agency that books clubs, and you could learn about how tours take place, and you could work for Live Nation that does that. There's many different ways that you could participate in a very exciting career, like the music business or the movie making business or the television business. And you don't have to be the movie star. You don't have to be the guy on the album cover. You don't have to be the actor on the series to still have a very exciting career. It depends on what you love. Now, if you're starting in high school and you really just know generally you love music, and generally it's important to you, and it really moves you, and it even changes your life, and maybe gives you comfort when you're really kind of stressed out at home, and you hear some songs and you hear some lyrics, and it kind of gives you a new perspective on your life and how you can make it better. And if you really feel strongly about it, the truth is there's many places where you can learn internship programs. You can take classes outside schools themselves. They teach courses, like NYU has some courses, or Berklee School of Music. You just got to throw yourself into it a little bit and see what you like, because you may find out that the thing you like the best is, I don't know, shooting photos of album covers. It's a vast world, but starting with a passion like you love music, that's the first step. And then it's a big step between that and figure out how you can make a living. And that's not easy to figure out.
So, John, we always end on the same question. We'd love to ask it to you. If you could go back and speak to yourself at 18, what would you say, knowing everything that you know now?
God almighty. Because when you're 18, there's so many things going on at the same time, and you have so many thoughts. It's all about how are you going to fit into this world that you're about to step into. And you're frightened, you're excited, maybe to embrace maybe my insecurities a little bit, rather than just try to block it out and say, I'm just going to jam this through. I'm just going to make this happen. Maybe I should have been a little bit more open to admitting my vulnerability, being able to admit and acknowledge that I was scared. There are a lot of things I didn't know, but I still believed that I had this talent, that I could succeed eventually. But to acknowledge that, and somehow not being so kind of falsely confident that you let more things happen to you, let nature and let life and let people around you come to you more. And I think I probably I blocked people out in the beginning because of my own insecurities. And I don't know if that's answering the question, but if I were speaking to myself as an 18-year-old, that's one of the things I would have said. And the other is to seek out wiser and more experienced people and learn from them. Try to put yourself in a position where you can be mentored, because I had 3 or 4 men in my career who took me under their wing at different points. And without those 4 men, who all did different things, but without those 4 men in my life over a 30-year period, one was a president of a big ad agency, one was a major film and TV director who just took a shine to my music and started giving me all the assignments. So when he did a TV series called Kate and Allie, and he did a couple other shows, and I did the music for all the shows, and he just loved me. He just said, John, I like everything you're doing. I support you. And if I didn't have those 3 or 4 people over a course of 30 years who just believed in me and gave me those opportunities, I don't think anything would have happened. And you only meet those people if you kind of make yourself open enough and vulnerable enough that people want to help you.
Well, thanks so much for giving us your time today. This was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Nice meeting you both, and I hope this helped, okay?
This absolutely helped.
Thanks for listening to Formative, a production of New York Edge. I'm your host, Rachel Gazdick. Our production partner for this series is Citizen Racecar. This episode was produced by Haja Adas, post-production by Alex Brower, original music by Garrett Tiedemann. Thanks to the whole team at New York Edge for making this series possible. Never miss an episode by subscribing to the series at newyorkedge.org/formative or wherever you get your podcasts.